Welcome to episode 66 of the State of the Market for Law Firm Sales in 11 Minutes. My name is Jeremy Pook, and I lead Senior Attorney Match. Today's episode will focus on why many senior attorney-led firms will be worth less during the second half of the 2020s. So let's jump right into it. So let's go back to the beginning of this decade. At the beginning of 2020, law firm sales and the value of senior attorney led firms was based primarily on the book of business that senior attorneys, that is, attorneys who have practiced more than 30 years, how they developed their books of business primarily during the pre Google era, what we call the word of mouth 1.0 era for the legal industry. During that word of mouth era, senior attorney led firms, rainmaker attorneys from those firms, develop their books of business, what we call really the hard way. In-person networking, handing out hundreds, sometimes even thousands of business cards over the course of a given year. Non-digital thought leadership. So what does that mean? That means publishing articles, leading CLEs in person, going to community centers, senior centers, chambers of commerce, to give lectures on the areas of law that attorneys know well, sponsoring events, going to events, placing ads in ad books, and what we call pre-Y2K advertising. So, of course, white pages and yellow pages, legal directories, radio ads, and TV ads, all of which built up that all important book of business for senior attorney led firms. And then when they went to sell their firms at the beginning of this decade in the early 2020s, when we look at law firm sales 1.0, at the beginning of this decade, law firm sales 1.0 for senior attorney led firms involves the sale, really the transition of that all important book of business, which consists of the client list, which was developed primarily pre-Google during that word of mouth era, plus referral sources who refer cases to senior attorney-led firms, selling that firm primarily to growing law firms that want and need those clients, they want and need the referral sources, and the consideration primarily is via earnout terms, that is fee sharing on revenues derived from the book of business during a negotiated number of years. Here's the but. Early in the 2020s, digital marketing disruption entered into the legal industry. We all, unfortunately, lived through COVID, and we lived through, as a result of COVID, that all important word of pivot. Talking now on the economic side of COVID, when we were all stuck at home for so many months, the world pivoted digitally. We all ordered everything and anything more often than we already had on Amazon. We became even more comfortable with ordering and watching streaming videos on our home TVs, our laptops, and our tablets, and we just entered into that digital world where we rely so much upon Google, and now here in the mid 2020s, AI. When it comes to the legal industry, that digital pivot has amounted to digital marketing disruption, meaning that today's and tomorrow's clients primarily go onto Google and AI when they're searching today for lawyers and law firms to hire, asking for who is the best fill in the blank lawyer or law firm to fulfill my needs. And growing law firms today that recognize that the attention of clients has shifted, pivoted digitally. They are attracting more clients than senior attorney led firms who are not recognizing and not investing in multi-channel digital marketing. And for those senior attorneys that continue to rely upon word of mouth for their business development, the key question is, when was the last time that you reordered a set of 500 business cards as you did during that 1.0 word of mouth era? So now let's look at how today's growing law firms, how they are developing business in the mid 2020s. So growing law firms are developing their business really over 6 channels. We call them really windmills because those windmills are developing those all important clients. Because what is the energy source for any law firm? Every law firm needs clients. So that those windmills generating the clients throughout the mid 2020s heading towards 2030 are as follows. First and foremost, Google, right? You're paying the Google tax to be able to attract the attention of clients that are searching for Google. You want to be on that first page of Google for when clients are searching for firms that meet the needs of what the client is looking to hire a lawyer or law firm for. Secondly, now is AI authority. When people are asking their AI thought partner about who's the best attorney or law firm, we want to be shown in ChatGPT and Claude, Perplexity, and whatnot that such and such law firms that they can handle what it is that the client needs. Social media, really, let's call that social proof. We want that is clients want to be seeing their lawyers active on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, and X. And of course, websites. Websites need to have multiple, tens, hundreds, even 1,000 plus 5-star Google reviews on their websites, as well as fresh content, fresh pictures to attract the attention of clients that want to know, like, and trust attorneys even before they ever speak with them. And in that vein, we're now already at the 5th windmill, which is interacting and listening and watching attorneys and attorneys from different firms, audio and visually, by listening to podcasts, watching webinars, watching YouTube videos. And then finally is old school, is that in-person networking. But it's all about getting the attention of the clients. And so much today in the mid 2020s and heading towards 2030, that attention is being driven digitally and online. So now let's look at the impact as we're thinking about why it is that the value of many senior attorney-led firms is going to decrease in the second half of the 2020s, is because if a senior attorney-led firm is not committed to digital marketing, then you're simply not going to get the attention of clients that want to hire lawyers and law firms today, because they are going first and foremost to Uncle Google. We are regularly saying that Google is America's greatest referral source for lawyers. AI is catching up fast. And if senior attorney-led firms are not capturing the attention, getting the attention of new clients digitally, you're just not going to replenish that all-important book of business for your law firm. And that is going to have 2 impacts on your practice. The initial impact that we're seeing in the marketplace is that if you're not attracting new clients and maintaining the status quo of your practice, that is continuing to believe that the yesteryear approach of word of mouth type marketing to attract new clients, if that status quo is not going to attract similar numbers of clients as it did pre-Google and certainly pre-AI, then in the short term, what we're seeing is that revenues in your firm are going to go down. Longer term, what we're seeing when it comes to law firm sales 1.0, which is based so much on the value of a senior attorney-led firm's book of business, is that if you don't have as many clients and if you don't have as many referral sources as you did during that word of mouth era, then you're just going to realize and receive less consideration when selling your law firm. Because again, law firm sales 1.0, the consideration is typically earn-out terms. A buyer is going to pay a percentage of the revenues derived from the book of business over a negotiated number of years. If there are less revenues derived from that book of business, the value of the practice is just not going to be as high, and it's going to be worth less, but not worthless. So let's look at who it is that primarily purchases law firms. Primary purchasers of law firms continues to be and will be throughout the remainder of the 2020s and heading towards 2030 is growing law firms. Growing law firms want and need 3 resources to boost their growth. First and foremost, they need new clients. Even if a senior attorney-led firm, if your client list is not replenishing as much as it did during the 1.0 word of mouth pre-Google era, Your practice still has value to growing law firms because they want and need new clients. So that is, even if your book of business is decreasing, it still presents value. Two additional resources that growing law firms want and need from senior attorney-led firms. One is your experienced workforce. They want and need your attorneys, your para staff. In addition, they want and need your subject matter knowledge. In today's 3.0 digital era for the legal industry, growing law firms want and need to convert the subject matter knowledge that senior attorney-led firms have developed. They want and need to convert that into digital content to attract the attention of clients that are looking online to hire lawyers and law firms. Very significantly, though, is that if your book of business continues to go down and your firm is becoming worth less, at some point growing law firms are going to have less interest to be purchasing senior attorney-led firms. First is because of the book of business. At some point, growing law firms will be able to, and we're seeing this in the marketplace already, generate new clients for less money than it would take to purchase a senior attorney-led firm. But the two other resources that we just mentioned that growing law firms want and need are also significant factors. In terms of your experienced workforce, if the revenues of your firm are going down, your key employee lawyers and your para staff, they may jump ship. We see this. We call it a random Tuesday event. They will walk down the hall and give you only 2 or 4 weeks notice. What impact does that have on a growing law firm? Well, a growing law firm, yes, they want and need your book of business, but they also need your talented key employee lawyers and para staff to continue doing the work, because most law firms, they practice at very high capacity. They want your clients, but they need your key employee lawyers and para staff as well. If you don't offer that because they hit you up with a random Tuesday event and prematurely left your firm, you may not be able to sell that firm despite even having clients. And the digital content, even though your subject matter knowledge has huge value, if your firm does not offer as many clients and does not offer attorneys and para staff, the fact that you have great subject matter knowledge is not going to be the most appealing part to promote the sale of your firm to a growing law firm, particularly now in this AI era when amounting and acquiring subject matter knowledge is even more at our digital fingertips than it has ever been. So, in summary, we certainly see that as we are going to be heading towards 2030, and we are now in the mid 2020s, heading towards 2030, we see the value of senior attorney-led firms becoming worth less over the course of the remainder of this decade, but not worthless. So what we're showing here is how senior attorney-led firms, how they built their most valuable asset of their firms over their careers, which is pre-Google. They built that book of business by in-person networking, non-digital thought leadership, event sponsorship, and pre-Y2K advertising. The but, though, is that digital disruption, it entered into the legal industry early in 2020. When digital disruption entered into our industry, the attention of clients shifted. It shifted digitally. Clients look online for lawyers and law firms to hire, and growing law firms today, they recognize that multi-channel digital marketing will attract the attention of clients, and they are simply capturing and attracting and retaining more clients than senior attorney-led firms. That is having two impacts on senior attorney-led firms. The first impact in the short term is that revenues are going down. If you are not attracting as many new clients as you did during the pre-Google 1.0 word of mouth era, then you're just not going to be generating as much in terms of revenues as you did in yesteryear. The second impact is a longer term impact on the value of your practice. If your book of business does not replenish as much as it did in yesteryear, then you're going to offer less clients, less referral sources to a purchasing, growing firm. And as a result, the value of your practice will go down. So the overall message to senior attorney-led firms, when we think about how your practice may very well become worth less during the second half of the 2020s is to recognize that even though digital disruption has entered into the legal industry, it is not as swift as what happened between Uber and taxi cab medallion owners, between Sears and Amazon, and between Blockbuster and Netflix. It's not happening as fast, but that digital disruption means that your clients, if you're offering less clients because less clients are hiring you today and your book of business is becoming not as filled as it was during the word of mouth era, then you're not offering as much value to a growing law firm. In addition, if you do not offer key employee lawyers and parastaff to growing law firms that want and need that experienced workforce, your practice will become less valuable. And a Random Tuesday is a real event. Your key employee lawyers and support staff will leave your firm if you have less revenues derived from your book of business, which is not rejuvenating and replenishing as much as it did in yesteryear. And even though you offer great subject matter knowledge that growing law firms want and need in terms of converting that into digital content, if you don't offer as many new clients to a growing law firm as well as key employee lawyers and support staff, that subject matter knowledge for conversion to digital content is not going to be as valuable. So our key message here to senior attorneys is that if you are not replenishing your book of business as well as you did pre-Google, now is the right time to sell, because over the course of the remainder of the 2020s, the value of senior attorney-led firms will become worth less, even though it is not worth less, even though it's not worthless at this time. And that is episode 66 of the State of the Market for Law Firm Sales. And we recognize much more than 11 minutes today.